Welcome to another Soccer Down Here 1v1, which this time around turns into a bit of an odd man rush. Jason catches up with women's soccer head coach Ed Joyce and men's soccer head coach Brett Surrency over at Georgia State about how things are continuing to grow on the field and off the field, and how off the field is helping on the field. It's a big conversation about how things are going and growing at Georgia State University. And it's a really nice exchange with the GSU coaches and discussing the GSU soccer facility. So here's the conversation with Jason, coach, and coach.
Let's just start with, does it still feel kind of surreal that there's 8 World Cup games coming to a city that you guys have seen grow up in the soccer world to this point to where there's a semifinal coming? Does it feel weird?
I don't know that it feels weird. I feel like because of the growth of Atlanta United, you're starting to see more, international games. The Club World Cup last year as well too. I do think that the probably the knockout games that'll be here will be really interesting, and hopefully the vibe around the city will sort of meet that. I feel like us in Atlanta with all sports, we've hosted some pretty big things. So you're acclimated probably to that piece of like the magnitude of the sporting event. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as you kind of make it specific about soccer, I do think kind of what we were talking about earlier, like once the soccer gets going, because you're getting all these, come to this fan fest and this and this and then, and you're like, oh man, like there's embracing for sure. Mm-hmm. It's like now we're like, okay, like I feel like it's what we do in the summer. You're like, oh, we start prepping this, and now you're just like, can the guys and the girls just get here so we can just start doing stuff? Like this was cool, and now I'm over it. Like let's get going.
Are you excited with Spain coming? I mean, Spain's one of the favorites to win this, and we're going to get a chance to see them in the city twice.
I think the piece, and we'll see where he is from an injury perspective. I do think the piece of like big names coming as well too. When you start thinking of like Lamine Yamal and like that piece and the following that Spain will bring, I do think will be really cool. Having been around Atlanta and seeing, when like Mexico's come in and seeing like the crowd that they bring and the excitement for the game and for their country it brings a different atmosphere certainly than when you go to Atlanta Night games or even like the Club World Cup games as well too. Like the passion surrounding national teams and the pride for your country I think is really cool. And then you attach that to a World Cup, like I think it will be another level for us.
What has the vibe been within your team? Because it's been interesting, and I think I've had this conversation on the women's soccer side where I think women's soccer is going to grow from this summer, and hopefully men's soccer grows from next summer with the Women's World Cup in Brazil. What's the excitement been with the players on your teams?
Well, kind of what we talked about, we have some guys with some, it's the world's game, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a lot of our guys have different heritage, within themselves. We've got guys that have come from France, but their parents are Italian.
Yeah.
So they're identifying in a lot of different ways. And we mentioned and talked a little bit about one of our Canadian kids has Congolese heritage, and the pride that he took for seemingly the whole week. That they'll be in a World Cup and actually in Atlanta as well too. I can remember actually even in 22 watching the World Cup draw here with our whole team and sort of just seeing it, escalate to where we are now. For the magnitude of the World Cup to be this close to our facility, certainly I think it brings a level of excitement to our building for sure.
What about your team, Ed?
Yeah, I think it's with our international contingent, we've got a growing number of girls that watch kind of Premier League and La Liga and international football in general. I think for us we'd get a lot more if it was happening during the fall.
Yeah.
And we could kind of do some things around it.
Yeah.
But luckily with our new report date, we'll be around for the very latter stages of it, so we can do some things around that as a group. But I think the overall recognition of the game worldwide across both genders, I think is making it, like you said, a bit more reciprocal in nature. So hopefully, for us, selfishly coaching women, it creates a big buzz for next summer. Because I think that's the biggest thing we see is the development of kind of the game worldwide is just for the women has just exploded in the last 10-12 years. So hopefully that carries on.
Have you seen a little bit of a spillover from Atlanta announcing NWSL coming? Has that created a little more excitement around the program?
I think so. I mean, internationally, especially, people seeing it as a total soccer town now as well, and as opposed to just the men's side, having them kind of play. Our biggest sell is, Atlanta United play a mile down the street. Hopefully that's going to be the same for the new franchise for the women as well. Yeah, I think so. I think it's you've seen a lot of the kind of Atlanta-based and Georgia-based type players as well starting to trickle their way towards a national team as well. So whereas hopefully that continues to bring the domestic side of things as well for us. But I mean, professional football growing is good for everybody. And I think that's kind of what we've seen Atlanta United do in terms of structure for youth development, which I think we could argue the girls' side has been a little bit behind, in most markets of having a true pyramid of. I think Brett will probably agree on the boys' side. Everybody agrees, kind of that if the kids on the boys' side get an opportunity at Atlanta United, that's the best thing for them. Whereas on the girls' side, it's still very much conjecture of which club is the best one to go to. So I think streamlining that pyramid and streamlining that kind of upflow of talent would be really helpful.
On the boys' side, that's actually interesting because I think it took a minute maybe for that to settle in, but it feels like the idea of local young players wanting to make their way to the professional academy is just kind of understood at this point, right?
Yeah, and growing even outside of ATL as well.
Yeah.
So obviously there's different mechanisms within MLS and protecting players and this, that, and the other, but you're seeing a lot of Georgia-based kids that are popping up at other MLS academies as well too. But no, I think you're exactly right, and I think that was always going to be natural when the new player in town kind of came in, and you needed a couple waves of players to come through. And I think probably even the outside clubs of Atlanta United need to see that as well too. That you're seeing more now where I feel like early on it was like, don't take my player.
Yeah.
And now it's almost like a rite of passage where the clubs are taking pride in, hey, like this kid came through us.
Yeah.
And ultimately that probably is what it needs to be, because there's no fighting the elephant in the room. You know what I mean? Like there's one professional MLS team in this market, and if you are sending your players to that and they ultimately and hopefully have that upward trajectory to the first team like that, that's a feather in your cap, so to speak, as a club. So no, I would agree, and I think that's what Ed's alluding to as well too, is that if that now then takes some or gives some structure on the women's side as well too, like ultimately it's probably better for the players.
Yeah, it feels like the women's side's a little more fractured on the youth scene with all the different acronyms of what the leagues are, and I get confused about which one is which and which one is supposed to be better, and maybe NWSL and to a lesser extent USL. Getting involved more on the youth side can help at least give you a North Star to point to.
Yeah, I think it can be alphabet soup to a certain extent of who's going where, but I think it's still that way on the men's side to a certain extent.
Yeah.
It's just having the brand recognition of MLS tagging on it is important. It's just whether the NWSL or Super League is ever going to have enough, financial backing to do that on the girls' side is a big question. But for us, I mean, we both have sons who are, around 10 or 11 years old. Mine's 9, Brett's is almost 11, right?
You just turned 11, yeah.
So, I mean, you talk to those boys who are going through that now, and they're not going to talk about going to college,
right?
Which used to be the goal for anybody. I think, rewind 10, 15 years ago, it was like college is the ultimate of what I want to go to, and the pro was a pipe dream. Whereas now, they know boys are in their clubs that are playing there, and they know boys that may be in the first team that they've met and things like that. So, I think that's how, for me, the cultural change everyone's always loves to talk about is that the problem here is lack of soccer culture is the big finger point, but it has to change somewhat organically, and it's not going to do overnight. But this is, I think, a big step in the right direction, and the girls following is important. So the question would be is financial stability. With Spokane women's team going under after, was it 1.5 seasons?
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
You just hope it is done in a way that can be stable, because we've seen them come and go before, and it's not good for anybody.
No, it does a lot of damage in those markets, and just overall kind of a black eye that is hard to overcome. How do you guys see the college game kind of fitting into that model? Because it's evolving too, and it feels like it's in a really interesting place that I think is still an amazingly beneficial spot for players to make the move up. It's just maybe a different kind of player that's coming in initially.
Yeah, potentially. I do think, and to Ed's point, I was thinking about this morning actually. I was 11 years old for 94.
Yeah.
And my son just turned 11. And I think about the stark differences in the game.
Oh, yeah.
Now versus then. And, I think the reality of it is that and we're behind in terms of the rest of the world, in particular, the European side of things. Not every kid is suited to go to college.
Right, 100%.
And to Ed's point, it was like, oh, you got to go to college. And like not every kid is suited to do that.
Yeah.
So now there's avenues to, even if it's not a homegrown contract in MLS, like you've seen through the years, like kids maybe sign first with the USL team.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean, and not go to college. And so there are pathways for that as well. I think as it applies to the college game, we got a lot of things going on in college.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
Not just as it applies to soccer, but.
Yeah.
Obviously we talked a little bit, the girls' calendar is changing a little bit. There's talks, and not finality, but the men's side will change, in a year's time as well too, which will, give a little bit more depth to the year, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe justify the college game a little bit more. Particularly when you start adjusting calendars at MLS as well too, and some of the things that maybe held back the college game as well as aligning. There's like a trickle-down alignment effect, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the fact of the matter is that you've always had really good facilities, and you've had places to grow and develop, I think, as an individual. What was probably missing in the eyes of maybe the next level is just the overall volume of soccer, because obviously there's limitations from the NCAA. So maybe extending that and providing more competition throughout the year, will certainly benefit. And I think it's the reason why it's kind of got to the point where, you're looking to, extend the calendar a little bit as well too. I actually think there's some bigger things from that as well too, but we won't dive into those.
That might take a minute. Let's see if the calendar officially gets moved. Exactly. Then we'll have that conversation.
And I just think there's pieces. There's a lot of moving pieces going on just with college in general in this country.
100%.
From a numbers perspective, and then obviously, the collegiate sport landscape is in a fluid situation right now. So there's a lot of dust that needs to be settled. But yeah, I mean, I think this summer will certainly open the eyes to, obviously the buzzword right now in U.S. soccer's ecosystem, and I think you're starting to see there's a lot of different opportunities. Depending on who you are, from a student, from a soccer player, there's different paths that you can take that might eventually meet back up, but give you different paths to get there.
Ecosystem is a really interesting word, and I did an article at the end of the high school season because we invest a lot of time in high school, and we see what it does in these communities for some players who are going to come to college. A lot of players are going to come to college, and some who maybe will have a shot at pro. But also in some communities where that pathway isn't defined, really, and high school is the North Star for them. And I think the ecosystem at times is only focused on a very small number of players in each birth year, and the whole structure of the game is focused on that, as opposed to the larger number of kids who play that aren't going to go there, and their experience maybe suffers at times because of it. It's interesting how now, I agree, I think the ecosystem part is growing to where, you've got the pathway for the future pros and future national team players, but you're starting to see at least better experiences and better pathways for the kids who are going to love the game and hopefully go on and replace all of us in what we do as coaches and broadcasters and administrators, and they need the good experience too. And I feel like they're starting to at least be acknowledged that needs to be taken care of too.
Yeah, I think it's challenging because I think change isn't always the answer. So we've gone back and forth, and in the club side of things, we went from birth year being the decider to now we're going back to school year, and that's causing some kids' experience to change. Some for the better, some for the worse. Some stay the same depending on where they are. So I think it's just, the shiny new toy thing. We change it and hope it gets better. But, I think the investment in how we're getting kids better is more important.
Yeah.
And are we getting kids to enjoy doing it at 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, so they keep coming back. We're not losing kids at 12 and 13. I think that's the fastest growing girls sport right now. I think it's flag football. So how we're losing girls at 13, 14 years of age because high school flag football is fun and people go watch it, and it's fastest growing in college as well now, I think, as well. So whereas we've got some things to figure out, but I think youth development is about making them love it first and making them invest in themselves first, and the self-worth side of things is really important. So, I think we all get caught up, to your point, in the top of that pyramid, when realistically how we get there is probably the more important part of it.
And I don't want to diminish the top of the pyramid because I think it's important, and we all as kids wanted role models and that poster on the wall of who we wanted to be, and you need that even if you don't get there. Like, I wanted to be Diego Maradona. I had no chance, but I ended up doing what I do because of that. So I think it's having both in the right perspective, and hopefully these conversations are happening at U.S. Soccer as well. And there's thought about how we make the experience better for everybody, how we don't lose those kids at 12, 13, the middle school age, where I feel like we lose a lot. And how do we then create the pathways? All right, pro's not going to happen for you, but you can coach, you can learn marketing, you can find all these different pathways in the game.
Well, or like kind of what we've been talking about as well too, like that ecosystem will involve fans.
Yeah.
So like, how are you? So we're talking about now, and obviously there's a price component to it, but most of those people that will go to the games in the World Cup, I would say the overwhelming majority were never at the top of the pyramid. Do you know what I mean? And then there's probably a window of people in there that maybe dabbled a little bit. Like I've got parents on my son's team that never played even into high school that now go play in these men's leagues.
Yeah, that's awesome to me.
And they're season ticket holders at Atlanta.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So you're right. Like that piece probably isn't identified, but they're some of the most passionate fans that always show up to stuff, and that is helping ultimately grow the game as well too. Ed made a really good point. The first inkling, I'll take this a different direction in a minute. But Germany struggled on the international. So if you go read about their youth structure and how they're changing the way the game is from a numerical and like field size, they've done a complete rebrand in the last 2-3 years, right? Like
started 5 years ago.
The numbers have changed, and there's obviously ambitions to ultimately affect the top of the pyramid. But I got an alert this morning that the Canadian basketball team beat the U.S. in U18 in the tournament. I guarantee you there's going to be a reevaluation of U.S. basketball because now they're not what they used to be on. So change is inevitable, whether it is the positive or not, or you're identifying the right, again, the buzzword is ecosystem. But like how in depth are you looking at that?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, a lot of what the top of the pyramid will be dictated by the bottom. And the bottom is obviously bigger than what the top is.
I think that's such an important point. And that's what I look at when I go to a high school game in Dalton, or I go to, you mentioned flag football, Greenbrier, is fascinating because I did their first state championship game for their girls team 3 years ago. The group that were seniors this year were freshmen then. They lost to Chambly 9-0. And that was the Chambly team that had Soleil Washington and Kara Kroon, I think, like multiple top players. And in that cycle, those freshmen were seniors this year, and they won the state championship over Chambly. And they had 9 players who play flag football. And they won. And they don't have maybe the same club experiences that players in the Metro have, but they found a way to compete and win that game. There's so many different stories in the ecosystem and ways in the ecosystem for kids to become the best version of themselves in soccer that they can be. That might be pro, it might not be pro, it might be college, it might not be college. But it's fascinating that those opportunities are starting to grow. They're maybe just not all connected yet.
Well, that timeline is not the same for everybody. I'm sure you guys have watched it, knowing who you are, but like the Jamie Vardy documentary is incredible. When you take a step back and you're like, this isn't real.
Yeah.
It's a Red Bull in it. It's a lot of Red Bull.
Yeah.
But you look at, and he states it himself, among other things that are just hilarious. But the actual soccer portion of it,
Yeah.
you're like, he shouldn't be
No.
in this place, and he shouldn't be doing this. And, there's examples like that in different stages, from a soccer perspective as well, too, in this country. So, it's an interesting, it'll be interesting, particularly as the game grows. Because to your point, I don't see the U.S. ever changing in the sense that you're going to have just a wide breadth of offerings as it comes to activities. A lot, like my kids are going to go to Midtown, and I was talking to someone the other day, and like, we're just really excited to play Ultimate Frisbee at Midtown, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And my response is more of like, I know nothing about, Ultimate, but like, cool. Like, you have a path that, and like, these particular kids aren't going to be tall, big athletes, but like maybe that aligns with Ultimate Frisbee. Maybe in 5 years' time we'll be talking about Ultimate Frisbee like we are about flag football.
Hey,
I have no idea.
Maybe.
But it is an interesting. It's interesting to kind of look at all the dynamics and where it will lead us. And I don't think the World Cup will hurt that at all.
No.
It's only going to help. I mean, the way I look at soccer is the more people we get playing it, because the majority of the sports most kids play in history here have been coach-led sports. It's play-driven, it's very scripted, it's stop-start, and it doesn't really align, I think, with the way a lot of young kids now are processing things. They want to be in charge of their own decisions. And, I think you look at soccer, and like you said, it can teach that, because we obviously have patterns of play and we have set pieces, but a lot of it is based on decisions of players. And old school people will argue and say that even modern football is too scripted than it ever has been. But, you look at it from a youth and a grassroots standard of things, like you're going to develop a bit more of a free thinker, I think, than you do in a lot of other sports. Which, to your point, where does it take you? Like 99.5% of youth sports participants were developing traits for someone else.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the more people we can get the game too, I think the better off we are for everybody. And that's the goal, I think, in what we do for a living, and cross a couple hats, and hopefully it carries on. But the World Cup, I think, again, I remember 94 was the first one I watched pretty much every single game. I think 90 I remember watching a little bit here and there, but then 96 was Euro 96, and it was in England, and it was that was my kind of similar experience. Didn't get to go to any games, but every single pub or restaurant had flags outside it. Everything was on the television, was about it. Every branding of potato chip had some sort of soccer thing to it. To whereas that's what our excitement level, I think, as people, goes more to what our kids are going to experience for the next 45 days or whatever it is.
I feel like everybody has that World Cup that was the one that either was their entry point into the game or the first one they really remember. And there's usually a player attached to it. Like it was this guy's World Cup. Who do you think is going to be this player that represents this World Cup?
There's a lot of opportunity. I think there's a lot of guys with a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah.
We talked about Spain. I think for a young lad, Mo's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders to be the next guy. And so far, he's stood up pretty well too.
He has.
His confidence level is justified and seemingly never shaken.
And I hope for his sake he does, because the World Cup's the expectation is different, and like obviously in England we've seen what happens when people don't quite hit it, and kind of the vitriol when they get home is tough. But Spanish press isn't much better.
No.
I think there's some storylines that obviously you've got both Messi and Ronaldo probably playing in their last ones. That's interesting for different reasons, probably. Especially from the Portuguese side of things.
Yeah.
And I think from an English standpoint, Harry Kane's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders.
England just in general always does.
The expectation is massive, and it's we've had a massive amount of success over the last 3 or 4 major championships, and it's like still not good enough. Or the way we're getting there isn't good enough. To whereas I've been guilty of it myself. Like watching us hasn't been the most thrilling thing, but with the way they've structured tournaments, draws don't kill you.
Nope.
So I think it's it's interesting. I mean, for me, on the American side of things as well, I think it's a group pressure dynamic. I think there's a lot of expectation and hope, and that is happening on home soil. I think those guys probably people have a bit of empathy towards the amount of amount of pressure they're feeling internally, performing on the world stage in front of their friends and families as well.
That's interesting you say expectation and hope, because I think having a lot of hope for this U.S. team is great. We need that. We should have that. And I think I'm starting to see it in these last couple weeks. Like, people who are not the people I'll usually talk to about PSG or Barcelona or whoever, they're asking questions about the U.S. So that's cool. The hope is there. The expectation for the U.S. is all over the map. Like, what should we expect in your mind?
I'm going to go back to this real quick to answer your other question.
Okay.
I think it'll be a messy World Cup. And I think it'll be a messy World Cup.
I'll be happy if that's the case.
I think it'll be a messy World Cup for these reasons. Is that I think brands in general have marketed the crap out of him the last couple of years.
Yep.
That now that he is here, the Argentina team is good enough to do something. I don't know what that is. But I just think he is, there's a blow up of him at Lowe's. You know what I mean? Like,
this is true.
Like, this is crazy when you think, but he's not American.
I know.
So I think people will identify with him a lot. I think when you start looking at some of the other bigger guys, I think there's starting to become a little bit of like fatigue with Mbappe, Vinny Jr., a little bit of fatigue.
Yep.
Holland's an interesting one when you start thinking about if Norway can make a little bit of a run because of who he is. He's another marketable guy that is being marketable. Lamine Yamal, the injury will be interesting. But I just think it's going to be a messy World Cup. I think people will walk away of all ages and remember Messi, maybe not even necessarily for the tournament, but because of the buildup of the last few years to the tournament. Now it's here, and he's the name. There's a reason where he's not even playing in the game, and he's shaking hands with the Texas A&M quarterback to exchange jerseys.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
That's insane.
That's crazy. I remember going to the Inter Miami ATL game. I think it was the first time he played in the Benz.
Yeah.
Atlanta United just scored.
Yep.
And the electricity of the crowd was because he was walking from warming up to go back into the game.
I remember that.
It blew my mind.
Yeah,
So,
he didn't start that day, and he was warming up. I remember everybody went nuts.
Yeah, it was crazy.
There'll be a breakout one as well.
For sure.
There always is somebody that we don't expect.
The James Rodriguez World Cup, obviously.
Yeah.
He was just a different level of player.
That was unbelievable.
You're right. You're exactly right. Someone will get overpaid because of the World Cup, per usual.
Oh, terrible time to be a sporting director of a football club.
Yeah.
Terrible time. From the US standpoint, I think they're going to be a victim of their own success to a certain extent. So this is the first time where you can really name 5 to 6 top players that are playing in top leagues and really contributing to teams. And then another one if you include Tim Ream had 6-7 season Premier League
I think it was
career.
9 actually.
Yeah, he was there a long time.
Some of that was in the championship.
You've got players that have been there and are doing it, so to speak. And the other thing is we're leaving players out now, I think, as well. Yeah. And the educated public are looking at it, and if there is any sort of, a step backwards or a lack of qualification or a mistake, they're going to start. They're educated enough to say that, well, you should have brought him. He'd have done this. He'd have done that. And we kind of said it off camera, but I don't think it's necessarily a good thing. Growing up in the UK and seeing how quickly people just get, held to the feet to the fire for lack of performance. I think in the past it's always been such a positive US soccer experience that I kind of hope that's what we get out of it and realise that this is going to kickstart another kind of rebirth, because 94 did that.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got another opportunity, which doesn't usually happen in people's lifetimes twice, to get the World Cup. So
that's interesting. I think you probably have the expectations are probably all over the place. If you talk to guys that are I don't know how to say this the right way, but soccer people, I think they're probably actually fairly realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you'll have all the way down to the casual fan that's sort of dipping their toes in and will be like, we're the United States, we should win everything.
Right.
And that's just the American ego, isn't it? So it's probably all over the place. What Ed just said there resonated with me. You go back to 94. I remember 94 really well. At the time, it was no host country has never got out of group play.
Yeah.
You got out of group play, and then you went to Brazil, and you were like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, we did it.
Competed.
We got out of group play. Now we'll lose this game. It was on July 4th, I think.
Yeah, that was
too.
amazing.
Like we'll lose that game, but like, hey, we did it. We weren't the first country to not do it.
Yeah.
So it's a weird balance, isn't it? As soccer people, where you're kind of like, yeah, man, there's a little bit of expectation now, which is cool. But at the same time, probably just all over the place in terms of realistic versus incredibly unrealistic. Yeah, I mean, hopeful. I'm hopeful. I would love to watch a lot of U.S. games
Yeah.
and I think particularly because 2 cycles ago we got to watch 0. So like now even being able to watch one, like I've been really excited. Like I was really excited watching the Senegal game. I was like, man, this is gonna be amazing. Like it was like a sort of wet your palate type thing. I was like, this is gonna be really cool. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's all over the place. Where I think people will really, I think the casual U.S. fan will be like, oh, we should be good, or like, oh, this is cool. The Bins is cool. And then I think you'll have, Ed and I talk about this all the time. It's like enough to be dangerous.
Yeah.
Like
You don't know what you don't know.
exactly.
Yeah.
But that person's tough. And then I think you have like the realistic guy where you're like, okay, yeah, I know that guy plays at AC Milan, but that whole team over there does that, or like that group of players. Talking about Norway, like that group of players, like they're a team.
I mean, Turkey to a point in the group, like that's a really good team.
We keep talking about this. We think that's going to be a really hard game.
Yeah.
You know, you remember some of.
Well, they've got some world-class players.
Yeah, they do.
Like Yildiz is frightening.
Yildiz, Guler.
You know, and you've got guys that
Guler scored some worldies, and
Australia have done well in big tournaments.
Yeah.
Just being together.
It's a winnable group, but it's also a losable group. Like you could lose every game, and I wouldn't be shocked. You could win every game, and I wouldn't be shocked.
I think they get through safely.
I think they do too. I don't know where they finish, but I think they get through.
And they get through safely. You know, I think there's going to be a lot. They seem to be, again, watching the documentary that is on there, it seems to be a group that has a bit about them.
Yeah.
Culturally, and I think they've got a
I think
coach that
Pochettino's
certainly
doing a good job of finding the balance.
Yep.
He's certainly got a bit of fire to him.
Some of his talk about experiences, you know, in particular when like playing for Argentina, and one of those episodes in the documentary where he's like, it might be his opening press conference, friendly, Copa America, World Cup, there's no difference.
Yeah.
Like that, and I think that piece. I feel like we as soccer fans U.S. soccer fans get frustrated. We're like, we're playing Panama again, and if that's what we're thinking as fans, I'm sure the players have a little bit of that as well too. And you know, so the idea of being able to do it against, though are not necessarily big names in the group, but like it is a big stage and you're hosting it. Like I would like to think that there's a little bit more oomph.
He said something that I wanted to end with after the game against Germany, which I thought was really interesting. He was paraphrasing, I guess he'd had a conversation with Dan Cathy, and he was paraphrasing something that Dan Cathy said, and I don't remember where it originated from, but I've heard it used in many different ways. Somebody asked him about his tactics and had they had enough time to install them and that kind of thing. And he said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think he's got the culture of this team nailed down. I don't know how far they go because there's so many variables, but how much do you guys and what you do kind of have that balance between culture and the strategy and the tactics and the philosophy?
I think when you start to win is when they're entwined. You know, so I think when you start to get it, I think culture over everything, primarily. But I think when your culture relates back to how you play, you know, I think that's when, you know, we've had our success here has been, and continue kind of consistency has been, we know who we are and our players know who we are and our players buy into who we are because it's kind of what we are as well. So I think that quote's brilliant. I think that's the trouble with international football a lot of times.
Yeah.
You only have them for a week at a time, all of a sudden you've gone 45 days. And then people who aren't in this every day forget that, for 45 days, those people have to get along.
Yeah.
You know, I just watched the French documentary.
I did too.
About 2010, and
Yep.
you look at that and it's one person's kind of mindset of how he dealt with people kind of created a bit of a a massive issue, right, with one person. So, you know, I think in our world it's much easier to look at culture as a big thing because it is. We have a specific cycle of like, this is what we do, this is when we do this, this is when we do that. So our culture is a thing that passes from one group to the next, and then circling back to the whole conversation to like the college landscape and the transfer portal changing. Our re-emphasis on culture, I think in the past 2 years, has become really, really important, because before you were keeping kids, you were losing maybe 1 or 2 a year, and now, especially, and Brett will probably talk longer on this, but he's losing 6 to 7, and we're losing 6 to 7. So whereas like you have to hit culture, even more importantly so. So I think for us, like we always talk about wanting to be the team that nobody wants to play, because when we have it, we keep it, and when we lose it, we hunt it. And like those are things that I think we look at in recruitment, we talk about pretty much daily. And I think that's why national team managers have the toughest job, because they don't get daily touch points. They don't get monthly touch points. They get maybe tri-monthly, if that's even a phrase. Every 3 months or so, they get a little camp, and they get to, you know, kind of instill a little bit. And you know, the one thing to go back to Poch a little bit that I gain massive respect for is he's a very good communicator in a language that is not his own.
Yeah.
Like the way that he kind of puts emphasis on his words and does things like that, which I think you can see people buy in, and they buy into him, which I think is probably what's going to, like I said, I think they get through comfortably, because I think he's got enough to hold him to the fire, which I'm not sure in the past that was maybe that side of thing, but he doesn't seem to be afraid to lay it out how it is in the press or in private. So
nope, not at all.
I'm stealing the quote, by the way, as well.
Yeah, I got to find the originator of it, because I've heard it before, but the way that he twisted it was great. That immediately jumped out to me after that game.
Yeah, it's interesting just listening to Ed talk there. I don't think you can have, I'm trying to find a way to word this the right way. I'm not sure you can have strong culture without, at minimum, progressive results.
Sure. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Like I don't know many places that have or have had a great culture that don't show at least steps in the right direction when it's time to compete.
Yeah.
For sure, because how do you define that your culture is good if there's not success?
How is it working? Yeah. How is the buy-in coming in here? So then I'll swing that to the U.S. It's tournament play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I don't think you're walking away, at least as the casual U.S. fan myself, I think you're looking at the 2 most recent games and you're like, that's progress.
Mm-hmm.
Like you went against a team that gave you the ball and you felt good about it. And then you went against a big name team and you competed.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I think you can walk away from that and find the positive, the positivities from that. So to Ed's point, if you go through and you barely get through, I don't know if that's hitting your culture point. But if you go through and it's maybe not all the way to comfortable, but you get through, I think the culture will be intact. Now, I think you could go through and squeak every game, but like you're doing enough, and I actually think that could be the best for the culture.
It could be.
Because like it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that was hard. You know, and at the end of the day, and you know, you see it in different ways, but like tournament play is different.
Yep.
It is just different, and it's different than a lot of these guys are used to.
Yep.
Yeah, you get the Champions League, and you know, but like that's it. You start talking about like the pyramid, like that's a small group of players.
Yeah.
So tournament play is different. So I think the way the group stages go will go one way or the other in terms of what the culture looks like, I think. But I think going into the tournament, I'd be watching the documentary, getting the feel from the outside. Obviously, all of this is from the outside.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going on the inside. It feels like it's in a good place.
Talking to the guys this past couple of weeks, it does feel like it's in the right place. I mean, yeah, they're saying the right things and they're doing the right things, but those little moments where you get genuineness from them or you see things on the training pitch, it feels like it's in a good place going into it. So
Friday will be a massive one.
Yeah, everything gets started and the tone gets set. I think that's the important thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, nobody wants to play the host nation first?
Nope.
I mean, South Africa was a great example of that.
Yeah.
This guy, was it? You probably say his name.
Shabalala.
There you go. Yeah.
And now Mexico gets revenge because they get the reverse of that game.
He scores an absolute worldie, and now it's going back the other way. I mean, I think you look at that, Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Canada can cause anybody problems. Mexico are on a burst as well. Like all those teams in those groups are going to have.
Well, and then I know we've said it before, but like Mexico is another level. You want to talk about culture?
Yeah.
This is the first time we've had a 3 multi-country host, right?
Yeah. We've had 2, but we haven't had 3.
Yeah. What was it?
3.
It was a couple of years ago. Austria.
In the Euros, you might have had more than 2. In the World Cup, you had Japan, South Korea.
That was it, right?
And that's it, yeah.
So we've got 3 hosts in it, which throws and you got a larger field.
Mm-hmm.
It throws a spanner in it because you got 9 home group games.
Yeah.
Then anyone can get turned over when you've got, how many more fans on one side than you normally would have.
And the way the groups fell too, I mean, Mexico, I think, was always going to have home field no matter what. I don't feel like the U.S. got anybody in their group that you worry about a huge contingent from the other side. You'll be fine, because you could have gotten one of those. Canada almost got it with Italy, where they might have been shouted out in their own building. Bosnia and Herzegovina is going to have a good crowd. Canada maybe has a couple that are a little more worrisome.
Bosnia played Mexico in the old dome.
Yeah, I remember that. That was wild.
That crowd was insane.
Yeah, that was cool.
I'm trying to think now as you're talking about, Ed kind of touched on those a little bit as well too. Like when you start thinking about those Copas that we've hosted the last couple of years, has there been any correlation to some of the better teams that have been knocked out as it applied to travel? Because like you're right, like there's some big trips that you can get in there, and like what does that look like from a just general wear and tear?
I think it'll be so interesting in this because it won't be normal travel for anybody. I mean, you'll be on the best private jet you can be on. You'll have every machine that can possibly help you recover quicker. But I look at more of like the climate, and Mexico City will affect games. The thing that I've said a lot this week coming into this is I feel like this is the World Cup that will have the most games decided in the last 10 minutes. Because I think the heat, I think the long season for a lot of teams. I look at somebody like Ecuador, who I want to say they're 25th in the world or so. They play kind of a pressing, hunting style. They have the legs to do it for 90 minutes. They're not going to be affected in the same way that a Norway might. And you get a game where Ecuador turns it in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I see that for a different way as well, though. I think with the third qualifier, I think you're going to see a lot of teams sitting in and getting worn down and conceding in the last 10 minutes.
You could see that. I think you'll see competition through the entire 90 plus, because your World Cup could be decided by scoring a late goal where you're down 4-1 and you get to 4-2 and your goal differential helps you get through, or conceding a late goal and you get knocked out.
We're not going to have any 112-minute, 90 minutes on this one, though, hopefully.
2 thoughts.
Buckle up, we will.
2 thoughts on that. One, to that point, and we just talked about it a little bit, each individual's country's definition of success is
wildly different.
So yeah, like, you're Congo, and you're like, yeah, we're not leaving the 18. But is that enough to get you through versus, the expectations of France or Brazil always of like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they changed the tiebreaker as well, isn't that?
Now it's head-to-head in the group.
The tiebreaker is head-to-head points.
So I think that piece is always interesting. That's not new, but like with an expanded field, to your point.
Well, how they're breaking it's new.
Well, no,
yeah.
The tiebreaker is. I mean the idea of like success versus failure.
Yeah.
But with some new countries in there as well too, that piece becomes interesting as well. The other thing I was going to ask you, and maybe just think about this, have you seen anything in terms of almost like retroactively looking at the rules with the water breaks and the stepping off the field and watching the tactical breakdown?
So that's come up.
Stop, by the way.
It's not. I think it's going to be normal. I don't think you can step off the field, but you can show video.
Okay.
and you get 3 minutes.
Okay, so back to the extra time. So you're going to have tons.
You'll have at least 3 minutes every time.
The extra time of the Senegalese game was 2 minutes, and the water break was 3 minutes.
Yeah, that made no sense. The things that have come out with that, like, to me, that's another one of the big talking points, because you're going to see the best coaches use that 3 minutes, especially in the second half, to change the game.
I was super impressed with Pochettino, and like I was impressed that was, and I'm sure it's happened in other games, I just haven't paid as much attention, that he was so quick on top of that in the first half. Mm-hmm. And then the respect he was showing the video analyst.
Yeah.
Because it's new, isn't it?
Same.
Like you're not. He was reached down and gave him knuckles, because it's like boom, 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 let's get this done. And he was like, good, bop, 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 and I was like, whoa, it was fascinating to watch.
I can imagine you guys really taking that as an interesting way.
I was texting Danny like, are you watching this? This is crazy.
Are you ready to do this?
We're just getting 3 full timeouts now is the issue.
You get a TV timeout in the middle of the half.
Yeah, I don't like it. Half time is fine. I think they're all doing that at half time. I think doing it in the middle of the game, I think it's just like, I don't know. I know they have to do it because not everybody's indoor, but we're going to do that in an indoor.
It will be everywhere.
69.
Every game will.
Well, it'll be 50,
I do like
in Vancouver, and you're like, I don't need it.
I do like that it's consistent, because
It has to be, I think.
I think you run into, again, like one moment changing a game, where if a coach is playing in a place that's hot and they get a chance to change the game middle of the second half, somebody's playing in Atlanta and they don't get that chance because you're inside, they might go home because of that. I think you have to make it tournament wide.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of that stuff. I think we're going to have a lot of things that are before World Cup 2026 and after World Cup 2026.
Well, refresh my memory. Was there water breaks last year for the Club World Cup?
There were, but it wasn't consistent.
Okay.
Like, we didn't have them in Atlanta.
Because we were indoors, versus I can remember Xabi Alonso sweating like nobody's business in Miami.
Bad choice of outfit.
Yep. Julian Nagelsmann was kind of the same thing this weekend too, but it rained as well. So.
Yeah, he went hat pretty quick. Yeah, I thought that was funny as well.
It's going to be a wild experience. I'm sure we'll be talking about it again, and I'm apologizing now for how long we talked here, because we went a long time, but this was good.
We probably talked a lot on the front end as well too.
No, this was good.